I'm really sort of going to talk about, I think the title is the green shift or the green transition, how it depends on minerals and metals and mined resources. And it's just to basically sort of set the stage for the discussion later on today, that we know why we are discussing this and why it is important, and that's sort of the premise for the rest of the presentations that will follow from this. So why are we interested in the green transition, and why are we interested in minerals and metals? This, of course, is the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This is something that has been ratified by pretty much every country on Earth, that this is something that we together have committed that we will work towards. We're actually committed to achieving it. What exactly that means can maybe be debated, and some of them might be more important to some of you than others of them. But nevertheless, this is sort of what the global community have said, this will work towards making this happen. And certainly in Europe, this is very, very high on the agenda. And if we look at them, this is all about, you know, a better world, there's no poverty, there's no hunger, all those things, we can all be for it. But if we look a little bit deeper, quite a few of these are related to raw materials and to resources in general. Energy resources, mineral resources, clean water. We have affordable and clean energy. Here we need minerals, decent work economic growth, we need minerals, industry, innovation, infrastructure, we need minerals, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, and we could go on. So many of these have some flavor of minerals into it. And that's sort of what we will talk about today, more specifically into the energy, so maybe sort of the affordable and clean energy, and the climate action sort of under one. So if you look at minerals and metals in Europe, it is not a huge industry. This is not looking at aggregates, so we're not looking at poop and sand and gravel, but looking at just metals and minerals. You see that in Europe, in general, this is creating revenues of about 7.3 billion euros and about 16,000 jobs. When you look at downstream, so here it says manufacturing of basic metals, the processing industry, the Norsk Hydro, all of those things landing here, all of a sudden, bigger money, more jobs, and when it actually comes to manufacturing downstream, the things that the minerals and metals are used for, we have those industries in Europe, and totally, this is a lot of jobs and it's a lot of money. And basically, you could think about different value chains for different things on here. You can think about mobility and batteries, you can think about energy technologies, electronics, machinery, or anything else that you want to produce comes out of the ground somewhere. Maybe not in Europe, but somewhere it comes out of the ground. And this is sort of a graphic taking home the energy message a little bit more specifically. If we want to move from this year to this year, which we do because we can see the weather is much better over here. So basically this transition from the brown to the green, it comes from minerals. And again, this is just one example. We could have 20 different value chains up here. So there's also the danger, and I want to say that, there's the danger that we only focus on the minerals and metals that we need for a certain industry, but in reality, this is what we need for the new energy technologies. It's cobalt, it's lithium, it's platinum, rare earths, but we still also need the copper and the iron and the zinc and all of the sort of more pedestrian raw materials to support all of this. But this is the new stuff that we need, and if we want windmills, if we want solar panels, we have to do that. This is sort of just showing again the historical mining picture globally. And what we can see goes back to 1850. But 1850, we have Europe here in the blue line. Europe had more than half of the global production of metals and minerals. More than half. Then up around 1900, United States in red are taking over. And this lasted until about the 70s. And now you're sort of seeing a more balanced production globally. But you see Europe here, still in blue. Europe today is producing something like 3 to 5% perhaps of the global production of metals and minerals. But at the same time, we have all kinds of industries that were founded during this time here when we actually were using our own resources. And those industries still exist, and those industries still need raw materials. An interesting thing, I think there's actually an updated version of this graph that I didn't get. What you can see here is the other regions. You have yellow is kind of a group of countries. But you have China here, for instance, in green, and as you can see, by 2009, China is actually the only place where you seem to have an increasing production, and all other countries are sort of slowly shutting down on the production. And what that, of course, means is that Europe is incredibly dependent on importing raw materials. We have all these industries that we founded. We have all these new technologies that we want to be first movers and fast movers on. We want to be the big windmill producers, battery producers, all those kinds of things. But that actually means an import dependency of 100%. 100%. For all of these specialty metals here, whereas tantalum, titanium, niobium, even the ones, again, the more pedestrian ones, iron ore, zinc, copper, these are the ones we do produce, but we still have to import more than half of what we actually need to sustain the society and the industries that we actually need. So we need to deal with this. We need to talk about where are these minerals going to come from. And just to get it sort of out of the way, this is why I'm sort of focusing in on this, because again, the premise for the discussions later on is how can we make sure that we can secure the supply for all these things we want to do. And you hear people say, well, we don't like mining, so we're gonna recycle. That's how we're gonna get all the raw materials that we need. Now, let's talk a little bit about why that is not going to work. We do need to recycle, but we also do need to mine. So this is the sort of the way to think about the mineral value chain. It starts with knowing where the resources are, knowing the geological models for how we get a copper deposit or a rare earth deposit or whichever deposit it is that we have. Exploration, then we go into a mining phase. After the mining, we have all kinds of processing that takes place before we actually can put whichever metal or mineral we're talking about into a product that we'd like to have. So this is where we make our wind turbines and our solar panels and our cell phones and our batteries. It's these guys. And then after that, we use them in our products. Then ideally, we collect them and then we recycle them and we put them back into the loop. We look at, in this phase here, we should look at, can we substitute? Can we find something that's actually easier to get to than this very expensive thing that we have to import? So that is also part of the mineral value chain, you could say. And then very importantly, we have waste, starting with the mining waste here, but we have waste actually coming off everywhere in this value chain. And so when you hear about circular economy, the way I sort of think about that is this whole thing, including how do you get things into the economy, how do you get materials into the economy. And circular economy, of course, and this idea that we have to recycle, and that way we can cover our entire need. I will dwell a little bit more on that. This is my new favorite slide here. This is a scientific paper that came out in 2017 that's called Conceptualizing the Circular Economy, an analysis of 114 definitions. This is really truly the title of this paper. And so when we talk about circular economy, it's one of those things that everyone says it's a really good idea without actually putting any content into what does it actually mean. So there's a little bit of a tendency that we say it's going to be sustainable, it's going to be environmentally okay, and it's going to be circular, and then everyone thinks it's a fantastic idea without us actually knowing what does it mean. And so we smack a green circle onto anything, and it's like, super, I'm green. This is how it often looks, a completely closed circle, and it's green, and we all think it's green. And this is actually, now I'm going to make a little bit fun of Denmark, because I'm allowed to do that. This has come out of a study that was asked for by the Danish government. They made a commission, or they made an advisory group to advise the Danish society on how do we achieve circularity or increase circularity in Denmark. And this is what they came up with. And it's a very good example of BS. Here you have some trash, it's an apple core, it turns into some bricks, it turns into a light bulb, and there's a factory, and then you're using something. Nothing actually really comes into this loop except here, and it is literally a green closed circle that's even coming into the loop. Whatever that means. I have no idea how to interpret this and what it means, but I just know that this is not actually how it works. Because this completely closed loop that we all think sounds so great, that we can smack a green circle on it, for many reasons, that is not going to solve our problem. And the first reason, very easy, is that we are going to be more and more people. and we are all going to want to have batteries and refrigerators and cars and these kinds of things. More and more people, that means probably that we'll have an increasing demand for metals and minerals. All of these people are actually using more per person as well. So now it's starting to look really bad. If you go back to 1900 again, and we're sort of normalizing on a logarithmic scale, so we'll say of all these 8, 10 metals out here on the right, let's say that we used 1 in year 1900. How much are we then using today? There's a few where we're actually using a little bit less, tin and silver. It's very common here in Norway, I think. But anyway, we're not using as much of that as we used to. Look at all the others. Chromium, 100 times as much. Aluminum, 1,000 times as much. And again, the pedestrian ones in here, copper, zinc, and iron, sort of 5 times as much, 4 or 5 times as much. So we have more people, and every single person is using 5 times as much as we were 100 years ago. That is very easy math, that this is an increase in demand. Another thing, and this becomes really important, when we go back again in historical times, we used certain raw materials, and as our technologies become more complex, or have become more complex, we use more and more of these minerals and metals. And so today, creating all these things, catalytic converters, wind turbines, solar panels, we are pretty much using the entire periodic table as raw materials for these things, because they're very special properties, and we need to have a very special alloy to do exactly what it is we want to do. So the ones that we're using today that we weren't using before, we can't recycle because we weren't using them before. We left them in the rock for a long time. And this next figure is actually stolen from the Norwegians as well. Originally came from someone, I think, from NGU, and this shows the stock. Where are the minerals that we're actually using? Well, they are in the houses, they are in the wind turbines, they're in the airplanes, they're in the trains, they're in the road. And as long as they're there, we can't recycle them. We need them. And so today, we're building wind turbines that perhaps will last for 50 years. So when we talk about recycling, we don't have enough wind turbines to make the wind turbines we want to make today that we could recycle because of the residence time. So while we're using things, we actually can't recycle them. And this very simple figure shows that if you imagine any kind of raw materials, 8% increase in demand every year. These are years out here. So if you can recycle 100%, you can totally recycle everything. If you wait 1 year with recycling it because the demand went up with 8%, you can only cover 92% of your demand. That's very, very easy math. If you actually design your car to last you for 15 years, then you have to move out here, and then it will only cover a much smaller part of your need, down to maybe something like 35%. That is if you can recycle 100%. So the math is working against us here, that we want raw materials that we didn't use in the past, we don't have them to recycle, and the ones that we already are using are going to be sitting in my house and in my car for the next 10, 15, 20 years, and not until then can we actually recycle. 100%, the reality of how we recycle, this is a figure from Gradle, from Yale University. In principle, if you start with a chunk of metal, this is what's happening. We think that we can recycle 100%, but in reality, some things get dissipated, some things get lost in production, some things get lost in fireworks, fertilizers, other things off to the side, we can't recycle that. This is what is potentially recyclable, most of our metals still. But then in reality, we don't necessarily have the technologies to recycle 100% either of this block here. And that's basically down to, if we want to drag out the metals of this, and it is difficult to do, we're going to unmix the metals in this. We might actually need twice as much energy as we need to take the metals out of the rock. So which one should we choose? So there are technology challenges. That means that we can't actually recycle everything. But what we potentially can recycle here, of that, we recycle maybe what's equivalent of the green, because the rest of it is lying home in our desk drawers, and we're throwing it into the trash, even though we knew we should recycle it. So we're not collecting everything that we do now. So there are many challenges to this. So what in reality, it looks like, I want to mention as well, of course, before getting to the metal, we have a mining stage, and in the mining stage, of course, we also have waste that goes off to the side, metals that are wasted already there in the tailings at the mining site. So this is the reality of recycling. It's a few years old, it's maybe a little bit better today, but I can actually, I think, say with some confidence that we talked about recycling for a long time in Europe, but we've not actually gotten very much better at it. We are getting better, and we are increasing the amount that we recycle, but not very dramatically. And when you look here, you can see the ones in blue are the ones we're good at recycling. It's aluminium, it's copper, it's iron, all those things we're actually pretty good at recycling. I think for copper, the recycling is way above 50%. I think it's up to like 90 or maybe even higher for copper. But for most of the periodic table, and again, these were the elements that we were looking at before that we need for our energy technologies. In reality, we are recycling less than 1% of those. And we don't have very many of them because we didn't use them 20 years ago. So this is the reality of things. And therefore, when we talk about circular economy, and when we talk about how to secure the supply of minerals and metals for our industry, we have to think about the whole value chain, including getting things into the economy. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't think about how we can increase the recycling, because it is, of course, the way to go for us to produce wind turbines today that we can recycle 50 years down the road. But it's about the design. It actually turns out that this is the very, very important part of this whole equation, is what do the OEMs, what do the suppliers, what do the windmill producers, the car producers, the battery producers, what do they actually do? Because if they start to take responsibility for the sourcing of their raw materials, and they also start to take responsibility for the recycling so that we can get secondary and primary resources, then we're actually moving towards what I would call a circular economy rather than a closed source.